When I bought that old creaky plantation house for just $3, I thought it was a miracle, a once glorious southern mansion, standing tall yet forgotten by time, ivy crawling up its white columns, and whispers of history echoing through its halls. But I had no idea that my quiet dream home would become a battlefield, and that a woman named Karen Whitmore would soon be screaming on my porch, claiming, "This is my family's land." It all started when I moved to Magnolia County, a small, sleepy town where every face looked familiar, except mine. After losing my job and nearly everything I owned, I stumbled across an online auction listing, 200-year-old Plantation Estate, historical restoration project. Starting bid, $3 at first. I laughed. $3? For a house? But the more I looked into it, the more real it became. The county had foreclosed the property decades ago due to unpaid taxes, and no one had claimed it since. The only condition was, whoever bought it had to restore the property and preserve its history. I couldn't believe my luck. I signed the papers, packed my truck, and drove down a narrow dirt road lined with oaks that led me straight to Rosewood Manor, a place frozen in time. The first time I stepped onto that creaky porch, it felt like stepping into a ghost story. The front doors were 10 feet tall, carved with faded roses and vines. Inside, the air smelled of dust, cedar, and something else. Old memories. I ran my hand along the wooden banister, where generations must have walked before me. The rooms were silent but alive in a strange way. A grand piano stood covered in dust. The chandeliers hung crooked and sunlight spilled through cracked shutters, painting golden streaks across the old portraits on the walls. I whispered to myself, "You're home." And in that moment, I felt a strange peace. But peace doesn't last long in Magnolia County. 2 days later, I was repainting the porch rail when a black SUV stopped by the driveway. Out stepped a woman in her late 50s, wearing designer sunglasses and a face full of disapproval. She didn't even introduce herself before shouting, "Excuse me, what exactly do you think you're doing here?" I wiped my hands on my jeans, confused. Fixing up my house." She scoffed, stepping closer. "Your house? Honey, this property belongs to the Whitmore family. You must be lost." I showed her the deed, signed by the county clerk. It was auctioned. "I legally bought it." Her eyes turned cold. "Auctioned? This land has been in my family for generations. You can't just buy history like it's a garage sale." I stayed calm. "Ma'am, I don't mean any disrespect, but the county records—" She interrupted, her voice rising. "I don't care about your records. My great-great-grandfather built this place with his bare hands." Before I could respond, she stormed up the porch steps and tried to push past me. I blocked the door gently but firmly. "You can't go inside," she screamed. "Don't you touch me! This is my family's home." That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about a house. This was about legacy, pride, and denial. 2 days later, I got a letter. It was from the Magnolia Estates Homeowners Association, signed by none other than Karen Whitmore, president. It read, "You are in violation of community standards. Your property's condition negatively impacts neighborhood aesthetics. Immediate compliance is required." I couldn't believe it. The house wasn't even part of their HOA. It sat outside their jurisdiction. Still, I decided to be polite and called the HOA office. The secretary sounded nervous. "Sir, Mrs. Whitmore insists the manor is under her community's oversight. She's very persistent." Persistent was one word for it. That evening, I found her on my front lawn again, clipboard in hand. She pointed to the broken shutters and said, "This will not stand. Either you repaint this entire house white by next week or face legal action." I laughed. "Big mistake." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny? You'll see what happens when you cross the HOA." As the days passed, I ignored her threats and focused on restoration. While repairing one of the upstairs bedrooms, I discovered something behind the wall. An old, sealed metal box. Inside were letters, photos, and journals dating back to the 1800s. They told a story not of the Whitmore family's greatness, but of their dark past. The plantation had been built by enslaved labor, and the Whitmores had abandoned it during the Civil War. One letter, dated 1864, read, "If ever this land should fall, let it be to those who will honor it, not exploit it." It was signed by Elias Whitmore, Karen's ancestor. That night I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was living inside history, and now, holding proof that Karen's claim wasn't about family honor, it was about covering up a past she didn't want remembered. A week later, the sky turned dark and a thunderstorm rolled in. The wind howled through the trees, rain slamming against the windows. Around midnight, I heard banging on my front door. I opened it to find Karen. Drenched and furious, she screamed over the rain, "You don't deserve this house! My family's blood built it!" I shouted back, "Your family's blood wasn't the only one shed here. I found the letters, Karen. I know what really happened." She froze. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to go silent. Then she whispered, "You read them?" I nodded. "The truth is in those walls. Maybe it's time someone finally acknowledged it." Her face twisted between rage and pain. She pushed past me into the living room, looking around like she was seeing ghosts. "This place doesn't belong to you," she said softly. "It belongs to history," I replied. "Then let's restore it for history, not for ownership." But Karen wasn't ready to let go. She shouted, "I'll destroy it before I see a stranger live here!" Then she grabbed an old oil lamp from the mantel, and before I could stop her, it fell, crashing to the floor. Flames burst up the old drapes in seconds. I pulled her back as the fire spread. The house groaned as smoke filled the air. "Karen, we need to get out!" But she was crying now, hysterical. "It's all my fault. My family did terrible things here." I dragged her out just before part of the ceiling collapsed. We stood in the rain, watching the flames consume part of the front hall. Firefighters arrived minutes later, putting it out before the whole house was lost. The next morning, Karen showed up again, but she wasn't angry anymore. She was quiet, holding a small framed photograph, an old black and white picture of her ancestors standing on the same porch. She handed it to me. "Keep this here. Maybe it's time someone else cared for this place." Her voice cracked. "I spent my whole life trying to protect my family's name. But maybe what it really needs is healing," I nodded. "Then let's rebuild it, together." Months passed, and something unexpected happened. Karen began helping me restore the house. She brought in historians, local volunteers, even school groups, turning Rosewood Manor into a heritage site, not a trophy. The same woman who once screamed, "Get off my land!" was now giving tours, telling visitors about the real history, the good, the bad, and the truth. And one day she turned to me and said, "You didn't steal my family's home. You gave it back to history." That line hit me harder than any argument ever could. A year later, the grand reopening of Rosewood Manor drew hundreds of people. The house stood proud again, restored, not as a monument to one family, but as a symbol of truth and reconciliation. When I walked up those old steps, I looked around and smiled. For $3, I didn't just buy a house, I bought a story, one that refused to stay buried. And as the evening sun painted the white columns gold again, I heard Karen say softly beside me, "Guess you got yourself quite the deal." I smiled. "Yeah, but some things are worth more than money." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who believes history deserves to be remembered, not rewritten. Because sometimes the past doesn't haunt us. It just waits for someone brave enough to listen.